good to have you back. How you feeling?
Better.
Better? Good. Well, good. You were all in our thoughts and prayers.
I don't know that it works, but I can switch them if you just tell me to switch. Yeah. Load it up first.
Had lunch with Gordy the other day. He's doing better, Gordy.
Is he? Good.
Mhm.
Glad to hear that. Welcome back, Randy.
I think I'll turn that off.
I know, mine just beeped. Turned it on.
He's getting screened.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Joe.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gentlemen, and ladies, we're gonna call this meeting to order. As is our tradition, we will stand, please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right through the mask? We will proceed. Begin with the first item on there is the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. There should have been, you should have gotten a copy of the minutes of the prior meeting in the board pack. And asked if there were any corrections, additions, deletions that should be noted in there.
I didn't see anything, did you, Mike?
No, I saw nothing, so I would make a motion to approve the
I'll s-
minutes as written.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Mike to approve and second by George. Any further discussion?
I wasn't there, but page 3,
Page 3, did you say?
second paragraph, first line, governor is spelled wrong.
How'd that get?
Yeah.
What's wrong?
It says governs instead of governor.
Page 3, is that?
It should be the governor's order has expired.
I'll fix it.
Good catch. You weren't even here.
Eagle eye there. Very good. Anything else? I read that thing and I never saw it.
Jeremy, did you get any kind of an answer for us about online meetings? Do you have any?
We're gonna get to that
Okay.
later.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank
That's gonna be in new business. It wasn't on the agenda, so I apologize for that, but we're gonna bring that up in new business, so can, or old business.
Other business.
Other business. Okay, other than that correction, I'll, if you will amend that, your motion to approve with the one correction,
Yes, sir.
and George will second that. Okay, we have a motion to approve as with one correction, and I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I will abstain. Sorry I'm late, had an issue at school. Since I didn't hear the discussion, I'll just abstain from it so we don't take any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry I'm late.
That's,
I have
well,
to, I have to abstain because I wasn't there.
okay. All right, so noted. We have two abstain from the,
Yeah, I heard some changes. I'll just take your time.
those that voted unanimously for, so motion carries. Okay. First item on the agenda is, make sure I got this right, approval of claims. Next item on the agenda.
We only have two. The first one is in Barnes and Thornburg for $7,920.13, the bulk of which is for the work we're going to be reviewing for the marketplace, and then some for the GAC key MOU that we talked about at the last meeting. And then Wessler, $16,757.50, which is the ongoing engineering work for the northern lift station in the northern TIF district.
Say that again, 57,
The Wessler is $16,757.50, which is for the lift station design up by the airport.
that wasn't on the list.
I added it this
We
afternoon.
added it because I just got it this morning.
Is that near completion now?
Close. We're gonna hopefully be going out to bid in another couple of weeks.
Okay. Great. Okay. Any questions about those two bills? No? Okay. Then I'll call for the vote.
I'll move we approve.
George moves to approve
the
as
claims
presented.
As presented, yeah.
Very good, thank you. I hear a second.
Second.
Mr. Chris, seconds that. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. That carries. All right, moving on. And under new business, resolution 2022-04-01.
So I have Randy Rompala with our legal counsel to talk about the resolution, the developer agreement, and I have Mr. Murphy and Mr. Reed here to discuss. They have a presentation they'd like to give you on the marketplace at Warsaw. So I would assume we'd probably do the presentation first, and then Randy can talk about the resolution and the development agreement that's before you, and the next steps preceding that if we were to approve this and move on. So I'll have Mr. Murphy give the presentation, and then we'll have Randy go through the resolution.
All right. So, speaking of this,
Yeah.
should we present this way or do y'all, where y'all look at it? I think this way in the front and back, so we
Yeah.
probably refer to this. And,
Yeah.
all right, so I'm John Murphy, Sullivan Lincoln and CFO of our firm, this is Reed Mason.
Executive Vice President of Real Estate for our group.
So we're a land-based real estate firm. All we do is retail shopping centers. We acquire shopping centers, develop
Now, would
shopping
you-
centers,
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
manage lease shopping centers.
Should move up there if you need that phrase.
So the purpose of today is explain who we are, what we do, the history of Marketplace, which I'm sure everyone in this room is very familiar with the shopping center. And if you could go 2 slides. So like I said, we're based in Atlanta. All we do is retail. So we lease, manage, acquire shopping centers, develop, so forth. We go to the, we're not just based in Atlanta, Southeast and Midwest. We have interest in 2 properties here in Indiana, one in Indianapolis and one in Terre Haute. So we're familiar with the state. If you go to the next 2 slides. So Marketplace at Warsaw, I'm sure that everyone in this room has either shopped there, driven by there, knows the shopping center, so I'll be very, very brief. It's 190,000 square feet. It was constructed in the 80s. It was once a very vibrant shopping center. The previous owner was based out of New York City. They had the great misfortune of basically having the worst tenant lineup for modern retail So JCPenney, Sears, Pier 1, Carson's, Bon-Ton, and all those tenants failed to change and morph to, new, modern, ways of shopping. So the property went to foreclosure a couple years back. A group out of Miami was the asset custodian for it. We found out about the property and liked it. There's no reason why the marketplace of Warsaw cannot be a healthy shopping center, vibrant shopping center once again. It's got great bones. It's got great visibility off 30. The city of Warsaw can support national tenants. So Reed's going to go over high level kind of the history of how we got here, and then we'll talk about our plan for the future, and then we'll end by talking about the benefits to the city.
No, absolutely. As John said, first of all, thank y'all so much for having us. We're excited to be here. We're excited to be a part of Warsaw. Prior to purchasing this shopping center, we had not been here. During our due diligence for the property, we came up to Warsaw, we toured the surrounding markets, and we really fell in love with this market and what it has to offer with the biomed, orthopedic capital of the world. It's got a phenomenal story. Like John said, this property at one point was a phenomenal shopping center. I imagine it was a shopping hub for the area. As John mentioned, it's had a misfortune of having tenants such as JCPenney's, Carson's, Payless, Sears, and Pier 1. As John mentioned, every one of those shopping centers, each one of those tenants went bankrupt over the past few years, with Pier 1 being the latest. If you go to the next slide. Because of that, what Warsaw was left with, the marketplace that Warsaw was left with, was a vacant property with no acres, with some small shop tenants who were hanging on. But honestly, you had, the JCPenney space, it was 22,000 square feet. The Carson space was 56,000 square feet. The space to the right of that, the other Carson's, which I guess was all one big department store, 24,000 square feet. And then the Sears, Payless area, 22,000 square feet. And where Pier 1 and Dunham's was is 30,450 square feet. A lot of square footage. The positives there are each one of these spaces are the right square footage for backfilling and finding a good tenant and a good replacement. We don't have a 100,000 square foot box, which there's not a whole lot of tenants. We have very good spaces that are leasable. The problem is the property, like John said, has been sitting there for the past couple of years. The other owner was not paying attention to it. He wasn't putting in the money that he needed to. So we had bad roof, lots of leaks, and a lot of work that needed to be done, including the parking lot, back parking lot. And John will get to that here in a second. As it sits today, it's only 14% occupied. So here you have a shopping center in the heart of your community, which is essentially the front door to Warsaw that leads into downtown, and right now it is vacant. We're excited because my job is to lease and fill these spaces, and all I see is opportunity. I see great bones, and I see a blank canvas of who we can bring to Warsaw. And go ahead.
One thing I'll add is the state of the property today has nothing to do with the quality of the real estate. It just has to do with the former tenants in the space, in the shopping center, did not adapt to e-commerce. They didn't adapt to changes in how people shop. So it was systemic to those tenants, has nothing to do with the quality of the real estate or the building itself. So our plan is to save it and
Nice. Here, if you go to the next slide. So like I said, today it's 14% occupied. A lot of vacancy, big parking lot. You can probably find a parking place pretty easily right there. If you go to the next slide. So here's the current condition. It's in disrepair. You've got staining. You've got, parking lot needs a bunch of work. If you can go to the next slide. If you want to go in here.
When it was in foreclosure, the special servicer was Rialto out of Miami. We have a relationship with Rialto. They've never been to Warsaw. The shopping center was a number on a spreadsheet. The asset manager for this property, I talked to him. He had like 500 loans, assets, troubled assets in his portfolio. He didn't have enough time, didn't have the resources, and really didn't have the real estate expertise to fix something. They were basically, just triaging it, making sure the lights were paid, the light bills were paid, the heating bills were paid. But a lot of times they didn't even do that. And if you can flip through.
Even to that, when we first came out here with the property, shopping center lights didn't work. Tenants were coming to us saying, what's wrong with the shopping, which it's a big issue if you're out there in the middle, at nighttime, there's no lights on. The Pier 1 space you looked at, the roof leaks like crazy. The Carson space to the right, the smaller space, when Carson's left, they took all the lights out. There's no lights in there, there's no ceiling grid. So you gotta make canvas, but you don't have the mechanics to police.
We've caught the property before it reached the point of no return. Because obviously when you have roof leaks, you have mold. When you have mold, you have remediation issues. Rialto, as the special servicer, they didn't understand which power feeds fed which, HVAC units and so forth. So a lot of the HVAC units, and there's 63 of them on the roof, weren't used for years to heat or cool the space. When you don't use your air conditioning, your heating system, it falls apart, basically. So we have to spend a lot of money to fix it. The good news is we can fix this, and we will fix this. And if you go to the next slide, Mr. Skinner, our goal by the end of this year is the shopping center looks something like this. The facade is new, and Reed will walk you through kind of the strategy of the what, the where, and the when.
Yeah, no, since day one, since we purchased this property, like John said, this has been our baby. This has been my baby. I'm very excited about this project and what it can become. And we've been doing our best to go out and find the best retailers for Warsaw to bring them back to this property. So if you want to continue on. So I guess go to the next slide. All right, so this is where we stand today. This is what we can share with y'all today, which I believe, maybe the ink-free news right here. Yes, sir. Yeah, I think y'all might have seen some articles that have come out about it recently. But as of a few months ago, or about a month ago, we've signed a lease for 22,000 square feet with Planet Fitness. They're looking to open in July of 2022. This will be a complete transformation of the space, new facade. It's going to look very, very nice. If you look to the far right, where Dunham's and Pier 1 previously were tenants, we have put in Big Lots. So Big Lots signed a lease again about a month ago, and their plan is to open in October of 2022. If you look at the former Carson space, we're at lease with a national retailer for 56,000 square feet. I feel like this deal can be signed here in the next month or two, depending on what happens with this process. But we have a very strong tenant that I think the city will love. It will be a tenant that will fill a void that y'all don't currently have. And I think all of the residents will be very happy with who we've worked out with there. We are also at LOI for the Carson space over to where Dunham's was for 40,000 square feet. That's again with a national retailer tenant. Now, I can't disclose who they are at this moment because we have non-disclosure agreements. We just can't say who they are until we get a little bit further down the road. But again, if and when this all happens, we will essentially go from 14% occupied to about 92-95% occupied by, call it, Christmas of next year. Of 2022. If you want to go to the next slide. So I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with Big Lots. I know Big Lots was a tenant in Warsaw years ago. Big Lots has completely changed who they are. Big Lots purchased Broyhill Furniture back in 2019. Big Lots is no longer your lower end, it's retailer. They now have Broyhill Furniture, very nice product from essentially $500 chairs up to $2,000 couches. I think 25 to 30% of their showroom is furniture. As soon as you walk in the door, there'll be a very large furniture section of very good quality products that are at an affordable price. They also have, if you want to go to the next page. All right, so this is what their storefront will look like. It'll be a very nice, prominent storefront. It's going to be a nice finish. It's something that y'all will be proud of. If you want to go to the next slide. So this is a merchandising mix. They have 30% of furniture, seasonal is about 9%, food and consumables 26%, Payroll electronics is 9%, and then hard and soft goods is 26%. So they have a nice balanced array of merchandise, but it's all good quality stuff that I think anybody would be happy to shop at. So you can continue through. So this is a look at one of their stores. And this will be a complete turnkey deal. It will look nothing like what it looks like now. It'll be a brand new store. Everything in there will be brand new, and it'll look very nice. You can continue through. So just a look at kind of some of the stuff they have in there. Our next tenant that we can discuss tonight is Planet Fitness. They've got over 2,000 locations across the country. One of the great things about Planet Fitness is they've never closed a gym. Very nice, high-end user. And Jeremy, if you want to scroll through. Here's some pictures that we can provide of what a typical Planet Fitness would look like. Again, very nice build out, top of the line, custom equipment. You can just keep on sliding through. One of the things that sets Planet Fitness apart, if you go to the next slide, I believe, is they've got their black card, which the black card, if you want to keep on sliding, Jeremy, sorry, I wish I could clear. Let's see, there we go, black card spa, so it's got a place where you can go on, they have tanning, they have massage chairs, hydro beds, so it's really good for the recovery of people who are working out. But again, a very nice quality retailer. You want to slide through. These are, we just provide a bunch of pictures of what it will look like. So John wants to jump in.
All right, so just a high level, back in August, we approached Mr. Skinner and the mayor about a public-private partnership to help do this. Because obviously you have to buy the shopping center, which we did. We bought the shopping center October 20th of last year. Then you have to, like for Big Lots, we're responsible for all the work. In fact, I just pulled the permit upstairs like 15 minutes ago. So we're starting construction Thursday. So it's, so there's the tenant work to improve the exterior and the interior of the spaces. Then there's the deferred maintenance. 58 of the 63, in that range, HVAC units are shot. They have to be replaced. The parking lot in the front has to be milled 2 inches down. The work in the back of the parking lot, needs to be, worked on. The lights, we're going to replace all the lighting system with new LED lights, which are bright, enhance safety and so forth. When we came here back in August, we stayed at the hotel across the street, and we always do a light audit where we, go out in the parking lot when it's dark. I went out there at 5 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't sleep. I couldn't see anything because it was dark. So all that stuff costs a lot. And then now you have, the past 2 years with COVID and with supply chain disruptions, steel's up a lot. Basically, costs have gone up 50% in the past 18 months. Part of that's COVID, part of that's supply chains, part of that's inflation. And if you go to the next slide, this is just steel. It's gone up. If you go to the next slide, recent events of the past 6 weeks really don't help with the war between Russia and Ukraine, because Russia and Ukraine are two of the biggest suppliers of iron ore on the planet, and they supply basically 50% of Europe. So they're going to be looking for, input goods elsewhere. So what we conveyed to the mayor and Mr. Skinner back during the summer was really the city has two choices. It can support this or cannot support this. Supporting it helps us offset some of the costs, so we can basically do everything. So, the shopping center at the end of the year looks much different than it does today. If you go to the next. So the goal is basically of the code that is affording this is to create jobs, attract new businesses to the city, help facilitate a project that would not be economically viable without the TIF, enhance the tax base, and then improve overall public health. This project does all of that. And the ultimate benefit is you're taking a dead, dying shopping center and you are removing the blight. And we will be enhancing the quality of life of people in this city, because the tenants that we're bringing into the town aren't here. So you don't have to drive to Fort Wayne, you don't have to drive to South Bend, you don't have to drive to Indianapolis. So that improves the overall quality of life. Next slide. I can't read that, can you? Your eyes are younger than mine.
No, so through some of the posts,
This is a response back to your article.
exactly, no, so there's been we follow this, again, we're Marketplace at Warsaw all day, every day. Again, this is our baby, and so we've been following some of the comments, and there's been very good comments thus far on the tenant lineup that we've I guess, announced. People are very excited about Big Lots, they're excited about the furniture, they're very excited about the fact that we're gonna breathe new life into this project. And, you know, some of these responses are, you know, yay for Big Lots, yes, you know, excited for Big Lots. So residents are very excited about the tenants that we've proposed thus far. And I think once we announce the next round, you'll have, and similar comments.
And from a leap of faith standpoint, we bought the shopping center October 20th. You couldn't get a loan to buy this, so we bought it all cash. The negotiations with the tenants, you know, you try to marry them all up. You know, he's done a phenomenal job of doing that. We pulled the permit on Big Lots today, 15 minutes ago. We're going to start construction next week, and we have a loan with Pinnacle Bank out of Nashville, Tennessee. We closed that loan today. Actually, it should be closing right now. The entire structure of all this is based upon the TIF happening. And given the input from when we met during the summer and so forth, we sensed that there was the political support to back something like this. So we took a leap of faith, bought the property, closed a loan today, signed leases with tenants. So we're respectfully asking, please approve this, because if not, it doesn't work. So with that, anyone have any questions?
Was Planet Fitness going into a vacant, currently vacant?
That's correct. They're taking the former JCP space, 22,000.
Okay. And the Big Lots is taking up 2 vacants.
That's correct. So Big Lots is taking 30,450 square feet. So it's where Pier 1 previously was, where Dunham's was, and then behind that there was additional, it's like 18,000 square feet. We're relocating OP Nails, who is a tenant within the shopping center. We tried to relocate Aqua Systems within the shopping center. They were utilizing some of that for vacant space to do some of their deliveries, so we unfortunately were not able to accommodate them. But they found somewhere else, so it'll be about 30,000 square feet. So.
I had a friend who was one of the developers that invested in shopping centers, and I had a store in 1986. I put the 1-hour photo in there. And so I'm very familiar with that because my business is not that far away, and it's nice to think that it's going to be fixed up, and because I've seen the progression of it going downhill for years because I live here. So,
Retail is changing, it's not dying.
yeah, I think so.
There are some things where if you can put it in a box, like, you know, I have a 6-year-old boy and we had a 3-year-old daughter. Thank God they're both out of diapers, but we're about to have our 3rd baby in like 2 months, so we're back into diapers. If you sell diapers and that's all you do, Amazon can ship it, and my wife likes that better than lugging it around in the car. But experiences, more value-oriented discount retailers are thriving. A lot of these tenants have kind of a treasure hunt sort of experience where the merchandising changes weekly. So, people like to go in and find really good deals. Healthcare is expanding. Restaurants with drive-thrus are expanding. But, the Carsons of the world, that business model may be different. Like Macy's. Will Macy's be around in 20 years? Who knows?
You definitely have to be very specific. My job is to talk to all these tenants and do research on them, read about them daily, we're calling their sales, we're tracking. Big Lots is doing phenomenal. They're one of the largest expanding retailers out there right now. They're doing 50 to 60 locations this year, and that's going to continue over the next probably 10 years. Trying to get, I think it's 500 stores, it might be in 5 years, so they're rapidly expanding.
I just read that Kmart will soon be down to 3 stores.
Yeah, so Kmart, and then you've got just tenants are, like Kohl's adapting, they're going smaller. So part of what we do is just make sure that who we're putting in the space is the right tenant, that we know that that's their comfortable square footage. We're not putting in a tenant that doesn't fit the space, so that we're not looking at a circumstance like that in 5 years.
I mean, it's no different than Sears. I mean, back in, you know, in the 40s, you could have bought a house in the Sears catalog. And people live in Sears homes, and they're well-quality built homes. So Sears was the Amazon of its day. But they did not change with technology and so forth. You know, now there could be like Internet 4.0, which, you know, we're all in virtual reality world, and who knows how that changes how we live and work. But I don't foresee it.
If you look at our slide, I think it was Big Lots was the #1 omni-channel retailer in 2020. Meaning I think there it is in the bottom right. Yes, in 2020, yeah, 2020. Meaning they do very well online as well as with their in-store. So they're juggling that, they've adapted, and that's why they're doing so well.
If this is approved, we promise you at the end of the year, the shopping center will be mostly full. It will look a lot different than it does today. And there are days and weeks I talk to this gentleman more than I talk to my wife. And, you know, we have a good feel, you know, we are relationship people. We do what we say. We will fix the shopping center. And it will remove that blight in that part of the town, which is good because then it's a genesis for other activity around it.
Any questions? Gentlemen?
Yeah, Jeremy, can you just talk to us a bit about the issuance of the bonds and how all that's going to work?
That's why I have Randy, but yes, we
Uh-huh.
can.
Okay.
So well, I'll have Randy go through the resolution and he'll go through the developer agreement and the next steps. That way we can get a feel for what we're doing today, what we'll do in the future, what comes next.
Welcome back, Randy.
Good to be
Good to
here.
see you again.
It's, I'm increasingly finding myself in public meetings and I'm happy. It's very difficult to make things work on Zoom and all the other electronic ways of
We
the
understand
world.
that.
I have to admit, when I moved to South Bend to go to law school at Notre Dame, I lived in a Sears house. We rented it. I didn't know it was a Sears house until there was a label on the wall in the what was sort of the basement, but it was behind the kitchen. So it was a good house. The resolution before you approves a form of development agreement with Sullivan Wickley and the city of Warsaw. So that's the 3 parties are the city, the Redevelopment Commission, and the developer. And in it, the developer is providing that it will do what they just spoke about, that they would renovate and improve the shopping center, and they would use the proceeds of bonds that the city would issue, and I'll talk more about those in a minute, the proceeds of those bonds in part to pay for the renovations. The reason why the Redevelopment Commission would be a party to all of that is that, and you may recall, you in the last few months designated the marketplace as its own allocation area. It's in the existing Winona interurban redevelopment area and had been part of the allocation area. Now all you've done is created a separate allocation area just for marketplace, so that as of now, any improvements to Marketplace where the assessed value would increase as a result of these improvements, the taxes that would be generated, the increment from that assessed value, you will be able to capture and pledge that to the payment of the bonds that the city would issue. So the reason the Redevelopment Commission's a party is to be able to pledge the taxes, the tax increment, the incremental increase in the assessed value and the taxes that would be generated from it to pay the debt service, the principal and interest on the bonds that the city would issue. The city would issue bonds through its economic development powers, using the Economic Development Commission. So that commission would also be involved in the process of issuing the bonds. The bonds would be issued pursuant to an ordinance by the Common Council that the council would adopt. And in the ordinance, in this development agreement, and all of the documents that would be provided, the only sources that would be available to pay the bonds are well, primarily one, and then two as a backup. One source would be, the primary source would be that incremental increase in the taxes, the tax increment. So the project in sense would pay for itself by virtue of the taxes, the increased taxes that the developer would pay through the improvements to the facility. The bond buyer in discussions would be Lake City Bank. That the bank has indicated its interest in purchasing these bonds. The bank has asked for two things. One, they asked for an initial backup from the developer for the first 5 years of debt service, so that over the life of the bonds, estimated to be 20 to 25 years, the bonds would be payable from the pledged increment that you would pledge from the project itself. For the first 5 years of the debt service, in the event that those tax increment revenues are not sufficient, the developer would make up the shortfall. For the next 5 years of debt service, if the increment was not sufficient, the increment from Marketplace itself, the Redevelopment Commission would additionally pledge increment from the Consolidated Northern Economic Development Area. Because this project would have a benefit to all of the retail in the area by bringing in more shoppers, we can legally pledge that increment as well. So in the first 10 years, there will be two backups to that TIF increment, the pledged increment. The first would be the developer for the first 5 years. The second 5 years then would be the northern TIF area increment. The final, the remaining term of the bonds would be payable solely from the pledged increment from the Marketplace development itself. And that's the deal that the bank has apparently expressed its interest in purchasing. And so the development agreement lays all that out. It provides that the developer, in exchange for doing these improvements, the city would be willing to consider adoption of a bond ordinance and provide for the issuance of the bonds, issue the bonds based on what I just described in terms of how they would be payable. With that, then the interest rate on the bonds is expected to be 5.55%. That's the rate that the bank had quoted and provided. Baker Tilly, the municipal advisor to the city, has done an analysis of what could be paid for from the pledged increment from Marketplace at Warsaw once it's improved, and that is the structure that is before you. The bond amount would be approximately $1.7 million. The amount provided to the developer, I think, is $1.4 million. I'm having the numbers right. That would, and that's set out in the development agreement as well. Yes, 1.7 would be the total bond, and then 1.4 would be the amount provided. There would be some interest that would be capitalized because the project, as it's being done, if bonds are issued here this year as we're anticipating, the increment won't be available for a period of time because the facility needs to be improved, and then, of course, taxes are paid in arrears, so some interest would be capitalized. So there's a portion of the bond par amount would be used to pay the initial interest on the bonds. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, I think the key takeaways are the bonds that would be issued would be payable solely from the incremental increases in assessed value resulting from the project. There is the developer pledge for 5 years. There would be the additional Redevelopment Commission pledge of the Northern TIF for the second 5 years, and then the balance of the financing would be payable solely from that pledged increment. The city would have no responsibility with respect to paying any of the debt service. And I say this with all due respect, but I say this every time I do these types of projects. In the event that there's any kind of default by the developer, they don't pay their taxes, the building isn't assessed, or the Marketplace isn't assessed as expected, again, in the first 5 years, the developer, the second 5 years, the Redevelopment Commission with the Northern TIF, but after that, there would be no responsibility from the city or the Redevelopment Commission to pay debt service on the bonds, and that's the risk that the bank would undertake, their credit analysis that they would they would take on. But there's not, the city has no responsibility with respect to the financing. So there's no tax levy, there's no impact if it were to default. That would not be a default of the city. And that's part of the benefit of going through the Economic Development Commission and doing these bonds under Indiana Code 36712, is that it is an economic development bond payable from sources other than from the city itself. So there would be no, again, in the event of a non-payment, it wouldn't be with respect to the city or on the city in that event.
So, Randy?
Yes.
If I may, based on what you just described, the city's backstop that's identified in there is just the 5-year period,
Exactly.
not.
Correct.
Not the remaining.
Right,
balance.
just that second 5-year period.
And why, is there a reason for that? I don't quite understand.
Yeah, no, that was part of the negotiations, I think, with Lake City Bank, was that they were looking for support, additional support or additional backstop in the first 10 years. And the negotiations between the city and the developer was the developer would agree to take on the first 5 years, and the Redevelopment Commission, the city was willing to pledge the increment from the northern TIF area for the second 5 years. And so that basically got you to the 10 years that Lake City Bank was looking for.
Does that have any effect on our bond rating at all in the marketplace?
No.
I know it's a private, or.
If
it's a
anything,
single- It's I should say
tangentially.
single placement, right?
Oh, I'm sorry?
It's a single placement of the bond.
Right, Lake City is buying, yeah, so these bonds themselves would not be rated because it's a placement, as you were saying. The bond issue itself wouldn't have any impact on the city's rating. Tangentially, it would have some benefit, because if you're, basically having this property be reclaimed and you're increasing the assessed value and it shows growth and development in the city, overall, that would improve. I can't say it would lead to an increase in the city's rating, but it would have some benefit if the city were to choose to do a financing somewhere down the road. The fact that this is happening would be viewed positively by the rating agency. So from that standpoint, it would have a positive effect, but the financing itself wouldn't have a negative effect, and the financing itself wouldn't have by itself, the financing wouldn't have any effect on the city's rating. The fact that this improvement's happening in the community would have a positive effect.
So the interest rate was all negotiated with the private placement.
Right. Right. That is correct.
As an old banker, I would say that Lake City Bank,
Retired banker.
retired banker, I would say Lake City Bank has been very generous.
Yes.
How so?
Normally, when you make a loan like this, you expect the financial stability of the developers to personally guarantee the loan. And they have not asked that. They've
Just
asked,
as backup
they just asked for the backup. But normally for the life of the loan, the developers and their personal assets are at risk. So I would say Lake City has been very generous.
Interesting.
You see it that way as well?
What I'll
Thank you, Randy.
I think Lake City Bank understands two things. One, they're the fourth largest bank in the state of Indiana that just happens to have been founded in the city of Warsaw. When we realized the property was in a TIF, doing a more formal public issuance of the bonds didn't make any economic sense because of the small size. Transaction costs and, the investment banking fees and legal fees and so forth would eat up the majority of the corpus that would go to the project. So when we approached Lake City Bank, and it would be great to get this in the paper, you are a community bank. This is good for the community. if you are a community bank, do something good for the community. So they are doing this because it's good for the city of Warsaw. And we talked to the bank this morning when we were driving in from the airport. They're going to be formally approving this on Friday. But the second thing is, I think the bank understands too, that the risks associated with this sort of project are relatively low compared to most TIFs, because most TIFs are used for ground-up construction. And in my career, I worked on a large TIF outside the city of Nashville, where there was a decrepit mall that had closed and it was dark. Great real estate right off the interstate, but we needed like $20 million because it was a $100 million transaction. You know, to remove the mall cost like $5 million. The mayor of Nashville and the comptroller of the state of Tennessee, they were worried about us getting money from the TIF and the school children of Davidson County never having a finished product because we didn't have any leases signed. Here, the building exists, we just have to fix it. And the value creation comes from signing the leases, which Reed and his team have done a phenomenal job because, 2 of the 4 are already signed. So once those leases are signed, it unlocks the value. And we met with the county, and actually next time I come back next week, we're going to bring in donuts to the county tax assessor's office. We've agreed.
What day is that?
It'll be sometime Monday or Tuesday. They don't know yet. But we've agreed to not appeal the property taxes so long as the bonds are outstanding. We've agreed, and we will, to be open book and transparent with all of our information. Here are the signed leases, here's the rent roll, here's the budget, here are the economics. Ordinarily, the relationship between the county tax assessor's office and the developer is adversarial. You don't want to provide them anything, so just you figure it out. Here, we're being transparent so they can properly, because we're all on the same side. So I think Lake City Bank realizes the risk is de minimis, but it's a really good thing for the city of Warsaw.
But you will agree, they've been very genuine.
Yeah, I think it's more of the term of the loan, because 5.5% interest rate, in 15 years, where are interest rates? Who knows? They're going to be a lot higher than they are today, because we've had the past 15 years since the great economic, the economic recession, rates have been low for a long time. But I'm sure there's people in this room that had a house mortgage in the 1970s and 80s where your interest rate was 18%.
I would assume, and I don't know who to ask this question to, but I would assume by providing a private placement as opposed to a public one, that we saved a fair amount of money on the bond issuance, doing
Yes.
private versus public.
Yes.
Is
It's very, very, for more of a public issuance,
You got bond rating. Public issuance. A private placement, there's no rating, and ratings presently are ranging anywhere from $20,000 to $45,000 with any of the 3 rating agencies. You don't have the underwriting fees, which I think were mentioned earlier, and their counsel fees. So yeah, it's a pretty significant savings by doing a private placement with a bank versus trying to sell bonds in the public. And the public, this would be, it is a taxable financing. So trying to do a public sale of taxable bonds in this market would be sketchy at best. And you probably would have to provide for a greater backup. The city, where we've done a couple of projects recently, the municipal entities, the governments have had to provide significant backup to the project. I'm not minimizing the 5 years of additional TIF you're pledging, but in a lot of cases, to do a public sale of a bond like this, the city would have had to put a tax backup on it. And that's not something you're having to do with the transaction that's in front of you. I should mention too, I mentioned Baker Tilly produced the numbers for the TIF analysis. What I should also say is I know they've had discussions with the assessor as well and basically have confirmed. So the TIF projections that they're showing are based on that agreed upon understanding of what the taxes should be once the project is completed. So I think Baker Tilly's providing some credence to the analysis in terms of here's what we expect the TIF to be based on that incremental increase in assessed value.
Thank you. Any other questions this group would like to address? Now's the time.
So I'm
I'm
curious.
sorry. Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just, real estate is not my bailiwick, but, so I'm curious, I do know what a real estate investment trust is, and I know what they do. So are you, when you have, you've told us you have all these other properties, are they under your management? Or do you come in, do the development, get it up and running, and then sell it? Or will you stick with the project and keep?
It depends on the specifics of the property. So there are properties that we do not own that we manage for third-party owners.
Okay,
There are properties that we build, and we will sell them shortly after we deliver the space to the tenant. There are properties that some of my partners have owned since 2007 that were long-term owners. The decision on when to sell is really depends on asset-specific, market-specific, what are market conditions at the time. And there's the right time to sell properties. I mean, if you have a lease it's one building and there's a lease that has 10 years of term on it, you'd sell that thing right away because the less term, the lower the value. But, I mean, we will develop, we will redevelop this property and manage it and complete it. If that takes 2 years, 3 years, then do we own it for a couple more years? Obviously, we'll sell it eventually, but we're not gonna, we'll be around in the city for a couple of years
okay.
to see this thing completed.
So if you were to do that, how does that affect the bond and
The obligations under the development agreement and the requirements to pay the debt service via the property taxes, they go with the land.
they're transferred to the
Yes.
new owner?
So they assume the liability?
Yes. So if we sold the property in year 4, whoever buys the property is gonna have to assume the liability of the last year of the backstop. They will have to agree never to appeal the property taxes. They will have to agree to provide the people at the county all the information they need to assess it on January 1st every year. We were very clear that we're gonna give teeth to this, because the only way this works is if the municipality, the county, and the developer are on the same page. So
Right.
we've aligned all the interest so that everyone has the information to properly value the property. Valuation is not gonna be a problem. It's not gonna
Okay,
be.
thank you. Thank you.
I would like to hear the mayor's take on this.
We want to vote on that? No.
That's a motion.
I just want to
Welcome,
say,
Mr. Mayor.
we've all had understanding of how retail has changed for the past 20 years. And looking at brick and mortar retail, what we've had available in this community, we've seen it change. We're seeing it change. It's continuing to change. Having a shopping center that was once thriving, that, as was mentioned, where the anchor tenants perhaps didn't respond to the market, put us in this position to where we've got a brick and mortar in our community, that something needs to happen. And it either is going up or it's coming down, and there's no in between. I think we're at the point where not many years are left to let that building just set the way it is. So having this group come along, Sullivan Wickley come along, purchase the property, and then come to us, showed some commitment as far as I was concerned. We did negotiate the term of our back of that bond. I think we went from maybe 7 or 8 to just 5 years. We've had a chance to look at what's coming in, and I feel like this is certainly a positive move. The investment is being made where I don't know who else would have taken this on. So I'm certainly in support of this. I think the only other thing I would mention is that, and I think it's safe to say that the leases are 10-year leases. So, that first 10-year period that they're backing and we're backing the second 10-year, theoretically, there's 10-year leases that are being signed on the larger stores. Obviously, things can happen. But I think that Jeremy's done a great job working with the developers. I think the comments made about Lake City Bank and their willingness to support this as a community benefit, a project that our citizens are going to gain that retail back that we've lost, certainly makes even more sense. So I would, your questions have been very good tonight. I think the majority have been answered, but please, if you have any other thoughts or questions on how the financing's working, ask before you vote. But I certainly have enjoyed working and coming to a deal that I think this community can live with and certainly benefit from. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'll just add the 2 tenants, the major tenants out there that they've signed are both well-run companies, and they want to be here in Warsaw, and that's a good sign, and that they've already made that progress here before they come before us.
Jeremy, if you put that slide up with the code and as Redevelopment Commission, my 20-plus years as a councilman and the learning curve, boy, oh boy, have I learned a lot about private investment with public encouragement. And there is so much money investment on the table. I think of this commission, Redevelopment Commission, and the realities of that area. This is definitely something that we should do. My daughter, just working on her driver's license, I lectured her as we left. I said, normally you don't drive right across an empty, barren parking lot. There are cars, there are lanes that will be painted. There are cars that are there. You need to be very, very careful in a parking lot. She probably was looking at me, you don't have to right now. What are you talking about, Dad? This kind of thing, I truly believe, is a very positive and good approach for us to consider. Appreciate your investment at this time, Randy, thanks. And certainly the mayor and the current administration. I think this is a good thing. Thank you. Did you find the code of the redevelopment? I thought there was a slide that had our responsibility early on, maybe.
I might just mention from a responsibility standpoint, I alluded to the fact that, so what you would be doing here today is approving the development agreement. The Common Council would meet next week and would have a similar resolution in front of them to approve the development agreement and also a form of bond ordinance. So the council would approve the bond ordinance. The Economic Development Commission has to hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution recommending to the council to issue bonds. So we would anticipate, if you were to act today and the council acted next week, that we would progress to a council meeting then in May, the first meeting in May, to adopt the bond ordinance, and then shortly thereafter move to closing with the bank purchasing the bond.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Well, I'm
or
just buoyed by the
questions?
fact that Randy Rimpala has stated that the TIF, the tax increase would